Over at the lower house, Congresswoman Gina de Venecia is pushing for bilateral talks with China to resolve the impasse between the two countries. De Venecia was with a delegation of Filipino women legislators that visited China recently. The details from Ferrie Abando.
Despite the territorial dispute between the Philippines and China, Congresswoman Gina de Venecia led a delegation of women legislators for a 10-day visit to the mainland upon the invitation of the International Department of the Communist Party of China. In a privileged speech, de Venecia stressed the need to resume the country's bilateral talks with China to resolve the dispute. She called for the creation of a council that will provide inputs on how RP-Chinese relations will overcome the current impasse.
I rise in a matter of personal privilege to talk about the need for active resumption of our country's bilateral talks with China. Seek creative and pragmatic solutions to the disputed isles in the West Philippine Sea, the South China Sea, to augment or add to the constructive possibilities in our relations in the light of the arbitration case brought by the Philippines in the United Nations Law of the Sea Tribunal, and to further improvement of the understanding between our nations on trade, cultural exchange, tourism, security, labor, education, and active cooperation in the battle against climate change and environmental degradation.
De Venecia bared the concern raised by China's leaders with the government's decision to file a memorial to assert its claim of the Kalayaan Islands. De Venecia stressed it's time to pause and reflect on the good neighbor policy of both countries, which prevailed on for almost 1,000 years. She pushed for policies endorsed by her husband, former Speaker Jose de Venecia, to include converting the zone of conflict into a zone of peace, friendship, and development, the dismantling of military bases in the disputed areas, the revival of the three-nation seismic exploration composed of China, the Philippines, and Vietnam, and the designation of fishing corridors for all the claimant countries.
I propose the creation of a Philippine-China Council to be composed of eminent persons, peacemakers, economic experts, representatives from the academe, historians, geopolitical experts, civil society leaders who will meet with counterparts in China to specifically address the problem in the China Sea and strengthen bilateral ties. I have to admit that our bilateral ties go far beyond this maritime conflict over a few islands. As pointed out by the Deputy of the International Department of the Communist Party of China, Asia-Pacific Affairs, it is hard to believe that we will go to conflict because of those little rocks. This view was also shared by Secretary General Li Jian of the Chinese Association for International Understanding, who said, "The South China Sea disputes are not the whole picture of China-Philippine relations. We should not stare at this single issue while neglecting other aspects of the bilateral relations. Otherwise, we may lose the paramount picture of the relations and compromise the overall interest of our people."
For the People's Television Network, this is Ferrie Abando reporting.